Now, when he went into prison, he knew who his enemies were. They were the white people, the white power that suppressed the black African. He knew who his enemies were. They were the ones who imprisoned him. He knew who his enemies were, for they were the ones that held him in prison. They were the jailers that kept him there. He knew who his enemies were. 18 years later, he knew who his brothers and sisters were. His brothers and sisters were the white people who continued to try to keep apartheid alive in South Africa. His brothers and sisters were the ones who imprisoned him. His brothers and sisters were his jailers who kept him in prison. Oh, he knew who his brothers and sisters were. When he was elected president, at his inauguration, the VIP seating were for his brothers and sisters who put him in prison, and the brothers and sisters who kept him in prison. They got the VIP seating at his inauguration when he was elected president of South Africa. Now, we are not called to be Martin Luther King or Nelson Mandela. Actually, each and every one of our calls are individual and unique and different. But we are called to make God's dream a reality. And to understand our calling, we can take some lessons from today's scripture lesson. The first thing we can learn is that there is always a cost into discipleship. There's always a price to be paid. There will be time and money and energy and monetary costs when you are disciples in this church. The second thing we can learn is that we are called. A lot of times we are called, we do not know where we're going with this call. We don't always understand our calling, but we know we need to do this, but we don't know why. When Abraham was called by God to sacrifice his son up on the mountain, he certainly did not know why. He did not know the outcome. He did not know that God would prevent him from fully completing the task God called him to do. He did not know that he was being tested to find out his true level of commitment to God. We are called sometimes not knowing where we're going to end up, but we must trust in that. God knows where we're going to end up. Final thing we can take away from this lesson is that God will always keep a promise. God promises that there will be a time when all our tears will be wiped away from our faces, when poverty will be no more, when sadness will be no more, when hunger will be no more, when there will be all people who will receive shelter, and will receive love and caring and sharing. When God's dream will be realized, there will be a day, a time when this will happen. It seems impossible when we open our newspaper this morning or listen to the news that this will ever happen. But we can take in confidence that there will be a day when this will all happen. You are part of God's creation. You are created to be in relationship with God. You are called to serve God. And it is your responsibility to make God's dream a reality. It is your responsibility to feed the hungry. It is your responsibility to shelter the homeless. It is your responsibility to take care and comfort those who need comforting. You are called to end poverty. It is your responsibility. But let's get a reality check. You cannot do it on your own. You do not have the time, the energy, or the resources to end all poverty, to shelter all those who are homeless, to take care or to make God's dream a reality. But you are part of an organization that is. You are an active member of this community and this church. And you are called to be active in this church. Now I know some of you in this room today have been sensing that it's time to do more. Perhaps some of you in this room have been sensing that it's time to become a leader in this church. To help lead this church in this time of transition, in a time of uncertainty. I think some of you have been called to serve as elders in this church. Some of you have been sensing that call that it's time to be nurturers and caring people and start to take care of the spiritual need of this church. I think some of you have been feeling that, sensing that call that it's time to serve as a deacon in this church. Now I know some of you have been thinking about this. I know some of you have been in prayerful consideration for this. I know some of you in this room have been knowing that you have a responsibility. You've been sensing that call to serve on the PNC. In this church, in its transition from one pastor, we need a new shepherd. You are being called to find that next leader in this church. And it's a hard task. And it's going to be a task that is filled with giving up time and energy. There's going to be monetary cost. But there's always a cost to your discipleship. Never believe that Christianity was meant to be easy peasy. Do not believe that being a Christian will mean your life will be okie dokie and perfect. There will be struggles. And you are called to serve. Some of you might be called to serve as teachers. Some of you might be called to serve as ushers, lay readers. But if you don't do your call, who will? Only you can do what you are called to do. I have a dream, God says. Please help me realize it. It's a dream of a world whose ugliness and squander, poverty and its war, and hostility, its greed and its harsh competitiveness, its alienation and disharmony are changed. Change into its glorious counterpart, when there will be more laughter, joy and peace, where there will be justice and goodness, and compassion and love and caring and sharing. I have a dream that swords will be beaten into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks. That my children will know that they are members of one family, that human family, God's family, my family, our family. What will you do to make God's dream a reality?